how we relate to our world and how we see it and how we turn it into that's how I took it. And that's as far as I was able to take it.
Could you hear that?
Oh,
Could you hear,
yes, kind
could you
of.
hear what Lucy said? So Lucy said, Lucy said, I took it to this, I'm interpreting for her
Okay.
on the phone. She said, I took it to, tell me if I'm right, Lucy, to mean that, um, to go into the different realm. Say it again. Yeah. Wait. Let me just say this. So the realms are that we make of them in our own minds. And so hell or
Okay. Oh, I didn't. Okay. Okay. Uh, oh, what else?
yeah,
What-
yeah.
Um,
Sheila,
I am, I don't know. I think I've
She
been
got
doing
that, Lucy. Good. Yes. Yeah.
go ahead,
I've been
Sheila.
doing all these like watching your thoughts, like particularly emotional thoughts, meditations. And like when
Hmm.
you really like watch them, like and read this is probably me think of you see that like 1 minute you can believe something is wholeheartedly true about something. And then um, 30 seconds later, you have a whole nother story about that same thing that
Yeah.
is totally different. So like then you believe in one of those, but when you start to watch it, you can see that like none of them are actually true because you keep
Right.
changing the story depending on and like even objects or like people, especially I think people change like that. Like you know a person one way and then all of a sudden something else happens and it's a different way, or even like a place you went to once, you go back and it's not the same place as you thought it was.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So
I,
there's this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I started to play with the idea that I'm in space. And I found
Okay.
that rather shocking. I'm on Earth, I'm on a chair in a house in the street, but actually
Right.
I'm in space. And we forget that Mother Earth is in space. And I started to just start to play with, I'm part of the cosmos. And that's part of inside of me as well, that there's nothing holding me together, really. I'm just a bunch of space between things. And actually, it felt kind of freeing.
So, did you do mushrooms before this class?
Pardon?
Did you do mushrooms before this class?
Um, no, but it was my psych medication.
Well, there you go. I'm just teasing
Oh,
you.
it took me on a different journey, and it's kind of like nothing
Yeah.
is solid. So I did go back to it, but nothing is solid. There's space between everything.
Right.
And I am not the way, I am not concrete in the way I think I am.
Hmm.
So I started playing with that.
Yeah, and this is exactly what we should be doing, you know, is to be that's the example of both Sheila and Louise is about like applying this to our own mind, applying this to our own experience, you know, applying this um to try to understand what is actually being said here beyond just the words that are being spoken, right? So yeah, anytime she's beating me up, she's like biting my hand. What are you doing? Why? Look at this.
Oh,
What are you
she wants to play.
can I have? But you okay, can we just calm down? Thank you. Okay. So so anytime we're doing something like these two examples that were just given, we are, and in fact Lucy's example applies also. Um we are it's like a thought experiment, right? Where we're like Louise used the word playing, like where we're playing with this concept or we're playing with this idea. Like that's what we need to do to get out of our self-imposed narrow box in which we've placed ourselves. Yeah. And in which we believe wholeheartedly, right? So we need to have this kind of, like, when we talk about emptiness, for example, one of the most important things about the teachings on emptiness is the question. Like when we say, like, what is the I, right? How do you define the I? If you say I like ice cream, or I dislike, snow or something, right? What is that I? And we have so many assumptions about that, right? Like we just absolutely assume that we exist, that the I is there, that it is permanent, that it is solid, that it is independently existent, meaning that it doesn't depend on anything else, and that it is truly existent, meaning it is not an illusion, right? But the moment that we start to examine it truly, then we start to see, no, wait a minute, what is this thing, right? Where Lewis was saying, like, oh, there's so much space, and the earth itself is in space, and there's so much space within me, right? And she was like, your thoughts can be like, you're so sure of it, and the next second you're not, right? And uh the same thing with people. Same thing with people, right? There, somebody can seem one way, and then the next second seem you're just shocked by, the kind of person they are, right? So to even ask the question, like, what is the I, that what is this I that I'm clinging on to so firmly, and that I cause myself and others so much trouble about, just to ask the question is already something really great, because normally we're not questioning that at all. We're just assuming that, of course, it's real, I'm the way that I perceive myself, the world is the way that I perceive it. And that's why, I like to bring up um smaller examples of shift in perception that changes um everything, right? So, for example, we were teasing Louise, like, oh, did you do mushrooms before, right? So there's like a hello.
She loves you.
So there's a
The dog is licking her ear.
yeah, so there's
Little
a
Ginger.
uh um there's a way we perceive things when we're hallucinating, either through drugs or through mental illness, or when, if take even a smaller example that probably most of us have experienced at one point or another, when you're drunk versus when you're not drunk, right? Like, how does the actual physical world appear? How do are you perceiving yourself? How are you perceiving others, right? All of that changes if you have drunk too much, right? So it's more obvious, of course, with hallucinogens, but or you take the example of dreaming, right? That's
Mhm.
probably the best example, and it is an example used in the traditional teachings. When we're dreaming, we're totally convinced of the whole situation. Yeah, like, no matter how crazy it is, you know. Oh, I was walking past this lion, and the lion started talking to me. And in the dream, you're just like, yeah, of course this lion's talking to me. It's not until we wake up that we're like, wow, that was weird. So this life is just like that. And this life, that example of a dream is given, as an example of how it's illusory when we think that it is solid and true and real. So, um, but there's also like this part where if you look 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you look on the sixth line on that paragraph, um, that we're discussing, when we see an object in the first instant, there is a sudden perception which has no logic or conceptualization to it as at all. We just perceive the thing in the open ground. So this is part of how they parse out perception. Here it's visual perception in the Abhidharma. Okay. So the idea is that initially we just perceive the thing. We don't label it. We're not saying, like, let's say, I perceive this water bottle. Okay. My initial perception is just the thing, free of any concept whatsoever. Okay. So there's certainly no label water bottle. There's no label, oh, it doesn't have like its metal color, if you want to say it's made of metal. I bought it at the secondhand store. I really like it for XYZ reasons. It has such and such writing on it, you know, right? So all of that comes later. Initially, it's just bare perception. Then Rinpoche says here, um, right, we just perceive the thing in the open ground. Then immediately we panic and begin to rush about trying to add something to it, either trying to find a name for it or trying to find pigeonholes in which we can locate and categorize it. Gradually, things develop from there. Okay. So bare perception, and then he says we panic, which I don't know, I don't experience that, but I'm sure he's right. So there's a sense of what do I do with this thing that's right in front of me right now? And then we slap a bunch of labels on it. It's a water bottle, it's this kind of water bottle, it has this color, it's this size, and then comes I like it, I don't like it, I don't care about it either way. And then there's also like mine, right? I mean mine, right? It's my water bottle. Okay. And all of those things are, wow, all of those things are changeable. All of those things are um, flexible, in fact. Do you guys remember these books that were really famous in the 60s and 70s? The Don Juan
Yeah.
books?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I love those books. And honey, just lay down. Come on, give me a break. So one of the things he says in there in one of those books is when you perceive something, even if you know that it's something else, how does he say it? Like, let's say that you are walking down the road and it's a little bit windy, okay, and you see a bag kind of floating, kind of along the sidewalk, okay. Your first thought might be, that's a fluffy white dog that you see in the distance. He says, before you try to actually assess what it is. So, like your first perception of that, I'm just talking about him. I'm not talking about Dabi Dharma. Okay, it's like your first perception of that is whatever it is, right or wrong, and then you try to um, validate that or invalidate that, right? Is it a fluffy white dog or is it a plastic bag? Then you realize, oh, it's a plastic bag, and then it's stuck in sort of plastic bagness, right? But he says, um, just try to stay with your initial perception of that thing, that it's a fluffy white dog. It's so interesting to do that because things are like move in your mind in a totally different way if you do that. You know, I don't remember what his point was, but my point in saying that is just that perception is so much more um, fluid and malleable and changeable than we might think. And part of the reason for that is because it is an illusion. And part of the reason for that is because our perception of things is incorrect typically. Okay. So, one of the ways that we can work with that, or that, one of the practices for that is something called dream yoga. Okay. So dream yoga is part of, oh, it's just one of my favorite things in Buddhism altogether. It's part of something called the 6 yogas of Naropa. And yoga doesn't mean half a yoga, it's not about stretching or things like that. But one of them is dream yoga. And in dream yoga, there's this whole thing where you try to determine that you are going to recognize that you're dreaming.
Yeah.
And right.
Lucid
And
dreaming. Yeah.
yes, but it's
Yeah.
so much more than ordinary lucid dreaming
Yeah.
that you might hear about. And then once you realize that you are dreaming, then you're supposed to manipulate things in a certain way within your dream. Okay. And the purpose of that is so that one purpose of that is so that you can practice 24 hours a day. So
Mm.
even when you're sleeping, you're practicing. Okay. Another purpose of that is because it allows you to, if you can really, apparently, if you can really master that, no, no, if you can really master that, then um uh man, I'm so distracted. Holy shit. Oh my God.
Uh,
If you can master that, then you can go to other realms and give teachings, and you can help people in the bardo and things like that, supposedly.
You know,
Uh,
the other thing, can I just say something?
please, please, please.
There's, you know, that the years ago, I had, you know, if you think of the perception, the way we perceive things through vision, say, you know, you see something and you label it the
Mhm.
white dog or the plastic
Right.
bag. And
Hmm.
I had cataracts. I had bionic. I had them taken care of.
Hmm.
And so, but I was driving one night, which I don't do much of, but I was with some friends and I was the driver for some crazy reason.
Hmm.
But anyway, that's another story. And so, it was on a dark road out in on Sag Harbor, and so
Hmm.
you know it was curvy and lots of leaves and trees and all that shit, you
Hmm.
know, hanging around. And
Right.
I saw some trees motioning, and I thought it was somebody coming onto the to the road. I slammed on the you know, you know,
Hmm.
because and so I made a story that it was, you know, that I saw something, and the thing that I was afraid of was running into somebody on this, you know, like because I was not an experienced driver,
Right.
and so it's so interesting that that the uh, that the physical, you know, the seeing it without labeling it, but then
Hmm.
the eyes, you know, like think of Van Gogh and the all the things, you know,
Right.
that his that the way that the senses, you know, the next level up in the skandhas, that the way that
Hmm.
that the senses are formed or formulated or whatever the correct word is, that
Hmm.
actually influenced the knowing of what it was that you were supposedly seeing. And
Hmm.
it was so, and I remember that so clearly because I knew that it was not likely that at 10 o'clock at night out in Sag Harbor on a road that there would be a person there. But my
Right.
mind couldn't, would not, did not let me just say, oh yeah, that's a tree.
yeah.
So that's
Right.
also, you know, what
Right.
Lucy was talking about, you know, is that in our mind I made a story because
Yeah.
it related to the fear that I had of driving because
Hmm.
I'm not a skilled driver, you know.
Yep.
All
Yeah.
of that, the story and the so and it wasn't a dream. It was and you know, and I didn't
In
hit
waking life.
anybody. It was just a bunch of it
Yeah.
was leaves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
And just like, we make that story
Just a
because
second, Lucy. Hang on. Pamel's saying something. Yes?
just like
Uh-huh.
in your story there, that we make a story, right? Because we're afraid of something, right? So we
Hmm.
fashion the
Yeah.
the outer environment to kind of match that. It's the
Yeah.
same with the ego. Okay. So we believe I exist, I'm most important, I have to protect myself, all
Hmm.
these things that are untrue. And so we create this story around that,
Yeah.
right? And in this discussion also, and this we'll go more into in the next chapter where we talk about the six realms, is that um shit, what was I gonna say? Hang on. Um Six realms. Oh yeah, the six realms themselves are just misperception of reality,
Hmm.
right? And
Hmm.
that idea is in Words of My Perfect Teacher. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's in one of the footnotes where, we think about the six realms as something outside of ourselves and something that is real and not illusory and all that kind of stuff, especially the human and animal realms, which we can directly perceive. But um, ultimately, it's just a matter of perception and how we are perceiving things. And our perception is colored by and and our perception is the result of, I should say, our karma.
Yeah.
Okay.
Say
So
that again?
our perception is the result of our karma. So it is our own positive and negative actions that create what we perceive.
Are you meaning like how we interpret what we perceive?
No, what we perceive.
Okay. Oh,
So,
okay.
you know, um, we
So we're
perceive,
creating the soap opera.
yeah. I mean, the French have a saying like, uh, oh, she's in her own movie, you
Hmm.
know? And I just think that's such a good saying, right? Because we make our own movie. We're the director, we're the actors, we're the, and we have this whole movie, but it's still just a movie. It's not real, you know?
It's
Lucy, did
funny
you
that
want to
you
say
guys,
something? Oh, I'm sorry, John, but John's saying something. Lucy wants to say something. Tell me,
Lucy can
Lucy.
say it. She's on the phone.
Go ahead.
We could hear Lucy on the
Out.
phone.
So, back down, change it again.
Mhm. Also, mind and how we make it. Yes, how we like this. So, or Yeah,
did everybody? Did you
you,
hear?
I think so. Yeah, John, you said that we could hear that, right?
No, not this time, but the
Oh,
last
so
time she
Lucy
was
is actually
on.
saying, take your glasses off if you're farsighted or nearsighted and see the difference in perception right there.
Well, there
And
you
that it's
go.
connect. Yeah, there you go. I mean, yeah. Did that summarize it closely enough, Lucy? Yeah, it's a, yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, yeah. Thank you, Lucy. Thanks. Yeah. John, I'm sorry we jumped in there.
I was just thinking about, a couple things. One, as I get older, I notice that I misperceive my environment like a lot, like you did with the tree. And all of a sudden you go, I should I should have known that. It wasn't a dog. But also I thought about the difference between I and the environment. Um, that that's sort of like the resolution of this is being in that and being aware of just that and not making all these constructs that are all these dramatic soap operas that are around those things.
Right. And if you are thinking about what they say all the time about like remaining in the present moment, remaining in the present moment, a huge chunk of that remaining in the present moment is to be free of these prejudices, these preconceived notions we have about ourselves, about other people, about various situations.
I wonder how someone who is so very enlightened
Mhm.
dreams. It just occurred
That's
to
an
me that
interesting question. That's a real interesting. I don't even know if what they could, I don't even know if they would have dreams as we know them, honestly.
I would think it'd be really cool.
Yeah. It just reminds me of like when, at the height of the hippie era, when, hippies were going to India and other places, um, these certain ones met a Tibetan Lama and they told him about LSD and they're like, do you want to try it? And he's like, sure, why not? And so he dropped acid and he was just sitting there like, do. And they were asking him like, well, what happened? What did you think? And he was just like, it's just samsara, you know? It's just like super samsara. That's it. Like he already knew everything was an illusion. He already knew, you know, walls could melt and colors could, and everything was connected, and all the other things that people say they experience when they drop acid, you know, was not news to him. He wasn't moved. He wasn't um, distracted by these things, you know? So, all right. So let's go on to the question number 4. And this is what I think was a mistake to ask you this question, but Um, please outline the 5 skandhas, giving a brief description of each and adding subsets as necessary. So, hold on. Please hold. Do you want to go down? Go down. Go down. So I don't know what you came up for with that. I thought we might look at what Rigpa Wiki has to say. But
But it's also, isn't it outlined kind of on page 124 and 125? I thought that was really interesting that he talked about that pretty clearly on
okay, well, let's see
that.
what you guys.
I mean, I put a little check mark on, see page 124 and 125.
Okay. Well,
It
I'm
be-
gonna
uh-huh.
I have to I'm so sorry for all the distractions of this dog, but I
We
think she
love
has
it.
to. Okay. Well, I think she has to go outside, and I'm tired of cleaning up piss. So I will be right back.
Okay.
There's a reality to deal with.
Yeah. Well, John, the other question that I have is, the neurobiology of sleep is that we go through, the brain goes through brain patterns. And so if someone, and I was going to add what you're going to say, so if the brain waves go through certain biological patterns, the deep sleep and, the go through the 4 stages of sleep, there's deep sleep, middle sleep, and then the third, and then REM sleep, which is it's a 90-minute cycle. And so that
Mhm.
in the beginning of the night you sleep deep sleep with dreamless, supposedly, and then you move into the REM sleep. And then in the morning is when you have more likely that the pattern shifts to more REM sleep in the morning, and that's if you want to remember dreams, that's when to try and remember them is in the morning. And so that the last hour or so of sleep. And so I wonder if the lamas actually, because since they are in a human form, even though they're in the Nirmanakaya form, I wonder whether they are uh, also subject to, or whatever the word might be, to the neurobiological functioning. Would they also, would that also shape the nature of their sleep and their waking, you know, uh, but I don't think that I can't imagine that they would be dreaming about McDonald's hamburgers, or something,
Mhm.
but because the
Yeah.
shape of their lives and the shape of their enlightenment would also likely shape the nature of their dreams, but that the neurobiology, that still would also shape that happens. So that's my my
Yeah, I was just thinking that
your question
even if
sparked
you
that thought.
thought about, even if you thought that an enlightened person um, would still physically dream based on sort of like a human need, um, that the content would be so much different.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that might be safe to say is that,
Yeah.
rather than having these paranoid needs, or just like she was talking about tripping, and there's lots of people that have bad trips because of depression, or they have all these psychological needs that come up because they're stimulating their brains in this way. And I was thinking that an enlightened person would have maybe really
Mhm.
good dreams.
Yeah.
Have you ever tested the Yangi Mingar Rinpoche? He and his crew does all those things at the in the University of Wisconsin where they hooked all of their brains up to
Yeah,
the
Mhm, yeah.
fMRIs.
I
And I
remember that.
think that they showed like, and they still do tons and tons of research, that guy there who works with him, and they like showed that their brains are very, very different. Just
Mhm.
even the
Mm.
people who aren't enlightened, but the long-term daily meditators,
Yeah.
their brains look like in relation to like different stimuli, like react completely differently.
Well, they
That
also didn't react that the,
yeah, they
that
didn't
they,
react. They react and
yeah,
like it's very, so I would guess that like there's a whole bunch of different things just going on that are like
yeah.
not at all the same. Like it's just ordinary folk.
Yeah, but we don't hear about it, you know?
Mhm.
I think it's an interesting subject line.
Mingyo Rinpoche offered a dream workshop and a
I saw.
weekend, which I attended. It was really lovely.
Oh, how was that? I saw that. I couldn't
Mhm.
do it again.
Yeah, it was a lot of this. I mean,
Did you?
I don't do it justice in my summary, but it was really about dreams and awakening, you know. Yeah.
Oh, we're back to reality. She's
Mm.
back. Or both of them are back.
Oh,
I shouldn't laugh. I think it's just adorable.
But what's that?
Palmo just came back in, and Ginger and she are just settling down. And Ginger is like, kiss me, love me," and Palmo is getting herself settled and taking cleaning off her glasses and getting ready to come back into the swirl of the class. Was that an okay description, Palmo?
Yeah.
you're on mute,
And
Paul.
you're on mute.
Oh, good.
So we're
Okay.
done tripping.
Okay.
Okay, got it. Thanks. Okay, so 5 skandhas. So what do you got? What do you got for me? I think it was Tess who said
Mhm.
was going to answer that. You're unmuted already.
All right. Well, so on page 124, he talks about let me see, where is it? Um, the When we awaken, we refuse to see space as openness. And then he talks that about as avidya, negation.
Mhm.
And so that actually ignorance is ignoring the intelligence and is a culmination of the first skandha, the creation of ignorance form. That was the first one, and he
Mm,
says there's 3 stages of that. So, and he lays that out in the last paragraph on
mhm.
124.
Okay.
And
Yes. So I would like to just go like, so you covered the first skandha.
mhm.
So who has the second skandha? Who can tell me
The
about the
second
second skandha?
stage.
No, second skandha.
Yeah.
You want me to do it?
Sure, absolutely. Yes.
Okay, so the second skanda is feeling, sensations, setting up a defense mechanism to protect our ignorance. So it says, since we've already ignored the idea of open space, we next want to feel the qualities of solid space in order to fulfill our grasping. So we solidify space, then we turn it into other. And then by doing that, we reassure ourselves that we exist. And whenever there's a sudden separation, a feeling of not knowing the relationship of that to this, then we tend to feel for our ground. And it says, in its extremely efficient feeling mechanism that we begin to set up.
Okay. All right. Very good. Then how about the third skanda?
The perception impulse.
Hmm. But you did the first one. I'd like to hear
I'm
from
sorry.
somebody else. Okay. I just want to make people work,
I
Yeah,
know.
the third
Get out there and work.
skanda
Third
is
skanda.
perception impulse,
Hmm.
and the perception refers to receiving information from the outside world, and the impulse refers to our response to that information.
Okay. Is it? Okay. So how about the fourth skanda?
These are your mental formations or your internal states. They're automatic reactions in which you kind of perceive them to be good, bad. You pass judgment on them.
Okay. Um, okay.
I want to go
Um,
back if I can. Can I do this and go out of order? Um, Tess, you answered the question about ignorance, I think. How do we get to ignorance on page 124?
how do we get to ignorance?
Yeah, how does it develop out of
He said there's a blackout and then suddenly an awakening. There's a gap, and there's already having created. I mean, that I thought was really interesting, that there's something that happens and then the whole thing happens. There's a blackout and suddenly an awakening. But we still refuse to see that awakening. That's on the top, the first paragraph of 124. We refuse to see that space as openness, and we ignore it, avidya, and so that's actually becomes the ignorance.
So it's the
But
refusal to see the open space.
yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think this is actually um, one of the, it might be one of the 10 questions that the Buddha refused to answer. Um, I think that what Tess said is correct according to what he wrote here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I, uh, um, but this question is um, sorry. I have to put her in the bathroom. I don't understand what she's doing. She's just pacing all over the place. I'll be back in 1 second. Just be much quicker.
So, I've understood ignorance as the failure to recognize the true nature of reality. I mean, there's one explanation. How does that fit into what we're just reading here, I guess?
I think that it's connected to even on page 123.
Okay.
She's just gonna start jumping into that.
Yeah, because I thought the whole skandhas were the lies that we kind of tell ourselves to make up this reality. So in order to kind of understand emptiness, you have to kind of walk back from these lies that we tell ourselves.
And they sort of like build on top of each other
Right.
and combined. And so understanding the skandhas helps us to be able to see through our own ignorance and break these things down. So it's sort of like breaking down a wall so you can get to the other side. Only the wall is an illusion.
Yeah.
It does talk about in the first skanda, it says the birth of ignorance, duality has begun. So recognizing yourself as separate is
Right.
the birth of ignorance. I think that's what it's
Yes.
referring to.
I'm agreeing.
Okay.
Um, so this what I started to say was kind of from where does this whole thing start, right? From where does the ignorance arise? If we have Buddha nature and we're sort of already have all these qualities of enlightenment, how do we get to where we are? Okay. And normally what they say is co-emergent ignorance. So meaning that ignorance arises with our consciousness from the start. Okay.
Oh,
But this is a question that I personally am not qualified, or not that I'm not qualified. I'm not qualified in the sense that I myself don't understand it. It's not like it's a secret thing that I have to have certain teachings or empowerments or whatever to do. It's just simply I myself don't understand it. But it is a question that is quite complicated, and it belongs in that category of good questions to ask a lama. What Rinpoche is describing here is sort of the process, right? Once ignorance has already arisen, then he's kind of outlining this process, right? The development of ego, kind of how do we kind of get here once ignorance has arisen? But he's not really talking about like where ignorance came from, or how did we become ignorant in the first place, which is,
thank
I
you.
think, your question, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I think
So.
that as we understand this process, you can become self-aware of, oh, that's my game.
Mhm. Yes, but it's not that. It's not. I think that you can arrive at that a little bit by what we were talking about earlier when I was talking about Sheila and Louise's answer to the initial question about just kind of, examining the mind in different ways, and really like watching the mind and seeing these things that we might not normally pay any attention to, right?
Hmm.
Then we can really start to at least um, begin to have some idea that things are not necessarily as they seem. And that is the starting point. That's where like we need to really start, because as I was saying earlier, like we're so convinced, we're like unquestioning. We don't question anything, you know? And so if we're not questioning it, we're never going to get out of it, because we just continue the same patterns that, have kept it in us since beginningless time. Okay. So I'm not saying that it's not possible. I'm saying that it's something that is like really at our fundamental core, right? It's something very deep and subtle. It's not just like saying, "Oh, I realized I was," and I'm not saying that's what you were saying, Jen, but
Hmm.
it's not like, "Oh, I just realized I was." Because of my childhood trauma or whatever, I was playing some kind of game with my friend, you know, to get them to prove that they loved me or whatever. It's so much beyond that kind of level of realization, or yeah, realization. Okay.
Almo,
So yeah,
let me ask you a quick question. And so
absolutely.
this is just out of curiosity.
Mhm.
But what I'm wondering is for people who grew up in a Buddhist environment, or that was just their world and their life. Do these ideas then just come very naturally to them, or do they struggle? Like, I feel like, at the point in my life, everything was so solidified before I started, studying Buddhism, and how difficult it is to unlearn some of those things and look at them differently. And I'm just wondering, like, would this have been easier if this was my entire life?
No, sorry.
Okay.
Not this kind of stuff,
Okay.
because like, I mean, unless you had enlightened parents like our teachers did, right? In which case, they were kind of just constantly being taught in various ways, formally, informally, conversationally, by example, in every sort of possible way, right? for them, maybe this would be a little bit easier. But for just like your average Tibetan, for example, no, what would be easier for your average Tibetan is the idea of devotion to the guru concept itself, past and future lives, karma, all that stuff be much easier for them because they grew up with that, right?
Mhm.
So for them, it's not like they have to struggle through their Judeo-Christian or scientific background to try to make sense of these things, right? So on those things, I would say it's easier. But for things like this, especially since most Tibetans don't even study,
Mhm.
you know, the Tibetan approach is very devotional, very kind of blind faith ish approach to things, right? I'm talking average Tibetan,
Mhm.
okay? Um, and like there's some beauty in that, because their devotion is very deep and their trust and faith is very deep, right? But they don't really ask questions. They don't tend to study, they do like whatever kind of practice their guru gave them, I guess. But um, in general, they're really no different from us. Okay. And from a Western point of view, we have a real hard time with faith and devotion and, kind of believing things, but we're really, really good at studying, you know, and we have that intellectual part wrapped up. The ideal is combination of those two where you are, studying and on a sort of intellectual level, and you have, that faith and devotion and so forth. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. And somebody else had a question, I thought. Somebody else was raising their hand. Yes. Anne-Marie.
I'm not sure this is going to make any sense at all. But earlier, when Louise was asking about ignorance and like where it comes from,
Mm.
and there's like stages, the second stage of ignorance dash form here on page 125
Mm-hmm.
is called the ignorance born within or whatever. But for some reason, I had the thought, which might make no sense at all. Could or would or does ignorance stem from our reaction to form? Like when we, you know what I mean? Like
I have
Yeah.
no idea. I have no idea,
I wrote,
honestly.
I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, I really don't know. Avidya, by the way, is the Sanskrit word for my Rigpa. Yeah, I've
Mm.
talked about my Rigpa in the past. So Rigpa is like wisdom, and Ma is the negation. So my Rigpa is translated as ignorance, and the Sanskrit is avidya, or however you pronounce that.
Mm.
Um,
I-
creation of
Isn't
ignorance.
it, you said that having noticed that one is separate, then there's the feeling that one has always been so. It's an awkwardness, the instinct of self-consciousness. Is that what you're talking about, Anne Marie? Like it's just like, oh, wait, what? I mean, is that what you're talking about? Noticing that sentence just popped up as far as your question goes. That's the second question of the second, or whatever, that paragraph. The paragraph you were just looking at, the second stage of ignorance form, and then having noticed that one is separate, is that noticing is just like, oh, what?
Yeah, I don't know. I was just thinking of Louise's like
Mm.
Yeah,
thoughts about ignorance and where does it come from, or
Mm.
right, right,
Yeah.
right. Okay. So we got through third skanda. Did we talk about the fourth skanda?
Yes. I thought we
Okay.
had,
That's it.
Uh-huh. What was
I
the
think we're
answer?
on the fifth.
Okay, what did we say about the fourth skanda?
It was mental formations and mental states. They're automatic reactions that we put labels on things. So it's good, bad, concepts and tags, I guess.
Okay, I see. Right, right. Pam was the one who answered that. Right. Okay, so the fifth skanda, consciousness. Who is the answer for that? You
Just
can go ahead.
amalgamation of all of them
Mm,
together, and which makes it very hard for us to break out of them because we've made something that seems so solid and real that we're lost in it.
right. Okay, so I think at this point we're just going to move on. I mean, we could talk a
Back
long time about all this. Hmm?
to the 6 rounds.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we can come back to this if we have extra time at the end, which is possible. He does go through just super briefly the 6 realms at the end of this chapter, but since we're going to go into it more in the next chapter, I don't see the point in kind of going over it now, although I did find some very interesting concepts here. So we'll see, but for sure we're not going to get through the whole next chapter tonight because we only have half an hour left, but let's try our best. Um,
Where is am I understanding that the 6 realms are located within which skanda then? Are they in the fifth skanda or in the sixth?
It said the fifth
The fifth, that's what I was thinking.
yeah,
in
fifth
the
skanda,
book.
yeah,
Oh,
Yes.
yes. I'm sorry.
yeah,
I got mixed up with fifth skanda and 6 realms.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. In the
Yeah.
fifth skanda, it says,
so
here we
That's
find the 6
Buddhism.
realms, as well as the uncontrollable and illogical patterns of discursive thought.
Yeah.
I did want to go just back to question number 5 here, define ignorance according to Rinpoche's teaching in this chapter. Does anybody have that? Liz?
It does not mean stupidity. In a sense, ignorance is very intelligent, but it's a completely two-way intelligence. So one purely reacts to one's projections rather than just seeing what is. There's no situation of letting be at all because one is ignoring what one is all the time, and that is the basic definition of ignorance.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So actually, that's really one is ignoring what one is all the time. I think it's a very succinct and quite deep definition of ignorance, as in avidya or uh, um, marikpa, right? Because this is, as I often say, right, there's always these issues with translation. So when we say ignorance in English, it doesn't mean this at all, right? We're saying someone is ignorant of something, right? Someone is ignorant of the law, or someone is, we can say this is an ignorant person, or they're racist, or what have you, right? But this, we don't even have a word in English for what ignorance, what marikpa or avidya is in Tibetan and Sanskrit, respectively, because it's just something that's. I wish they had. It's just one of the many words I wish they had just kept in either Tibetan or Sanskrit because it's confusing, especially when they use the same word ignorance for both Marikpa and Timuk. Whereas Marikpa is this really fundamental kind of ignorance that we've been discussing. And we don't know who we are, where we are, what, we don't, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of ourselves and reality itself versus just stupidity, right? That's a really big difference. And they're using the same word for both so often. All right, so let's go to the next chapter and we'll try to get through that. So I did include in the email with these questions an outline of the 6 realms, but let's go with what Rinpoche has here. So let's go around. I think we do have 7 people. So starting with Well, let's hear what Lucy has to say. With the first realm that he discusses. Can you give me a brief explanation of that?
Um, well, I kind of lost my place, but he discusses. You know what? I can't answer that just yet. I'm a little mixed
Okay,
up. Come
that's
back
okay.
around to me on another one, please.
Please don't worry. It's okay. It's all right. So who has the
Yeah.
answer
Okay.
for that? For me?
So the monkey's experience is in the
No,
hell
not the
realm.
monkeys. No, not the monkeys. Not the monkeys. Oh, I guess he is talking about the monkeys still. Oh yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. I thought you were on the previous chapter.
No,
Um,
the hell realm. That's what he's talking about first.
yeah. So before we jump into this, I want to make a very important note, which is that here Rinpoche is describing the six realms, up and back down in a progressive manner, right? Hell realms to hungry ghosts to animal, etc. But he's doing this to effect, right? He's doing this as an example to try to help us understand something. But in reality, we don't move through these six realms in orderly progression. Okay, where we, and again, this is using very relative terms, but like if I was going to be completely correct, whatever realm we perceive due to our karmic actions, um, is not going to be ordinary, because it's not going to be orderly, rather. So we might think, and some new age, I believe, start like that, like, oh, you chose this life, and then, because you had to learn certain things, then the next life you'll be more advanced and things like that. And I don't know, who knows, maybe that's true. But in Buddhist thought, it doesn't work like that, because it's entirely dependent on our own actions, okay, of body, speech, and mind. And in addition to the conditions that need to be there in order for that karma to ripen into an experience. Okay. So uh, we could, this is where karma becomes something quite complicated too, right? But we won't go into that too much right now. But essentially, what they say is we move through these realms like a bee in a jar. Right. So if you have a jar and you have a bee in there, it's going to be, up and down and back and forth and up and down, back and forth, trying to get out of the jar. Okay. That's how it is. So we could be right now in a human realm, and next life, God realm, then the next life, the hell realm, and then the human realm again, and then an animal, and then the jealous God. Just depends on what we've done. And not just in that particular life, but in all of our previous lives. Okay, because we need the conditions also for that karma to ripen. So if you talk about an app, you have an apple seed, right? I always give this example. If somebody gives you an envelope of apple seeds to, plant an apple tree, and you just put it in your drawer in the kitchen, an apple tree can't grow. You need to have the conditions. Yeah. The conditions being, you have to plant that seed, you have to water it, you have to provide the right amount of sunlight, you have to protect it from bugs and deer and other things, you have to make sure it has enough sunlight, etc. Right? Then you get an apple tree. So from one life to the next, we may not have the conditions. Furthermore, karma itself is not static. Okay. So the positive acts that we do, kind of decrease the negative acts, then vice versa. So karma is something that's also always in flux. So the variables are nearly infinite for what we might experience at any given moment. Okay. Overall, it's not a difficult concept. The broad reaching concept, even of the six rounds, is not that hard to understand. But I just wanted to make sure that you understood, because he's outlining it as though it were, we go from the hells and then this and then this and then this, and then we go back in an ordinary way. That's not how it works. He's just giving this so that we can understand we can understand this example. Do you understand what I said? I don't
Yes,
even
I
know.
do.
I don't even know anymore.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Um, without getting too much into karma, are we creating by this soap opera creation? Are we creating karma within that soap opera before we become enlightened, before we have a clear vision? Is that karma that is being created right there? You know, like we're living in that karma that we created? Or is that a separate concept?
Um, I'm not trying to understand your question.
Is karma mixed up with our illusions?
The illusions are the result of our karma.
Okay.
Okay. So we have created a certain um, conglomeration of various types of karma to experience this, our life as it is right now.
Hmm.
Okay. To be born in America at this time with this government, to um, to have a precious human life that we can study and practice the Dharma, to have friends, to have enemies, to have a good family, to have a bad family, whatever, you know, all of that stuff is a result of our own actions of body, speech, and mind. Okay. But that doesn't mean that all of our previous karma is being ripened in this life, because all the conditions are not there. Okay. So, for example, an example I always give, and maybe it's not a good example, I don't know, but for example, maybe in some previous lives or life, I have created the karma to have a certain type of relationship with my child, good, bad, indifferent, whatever. But this life, I don't have a child, so that karma cannot ripen because the condition is not there, right? But maybe next life I will have a child. Fingers crossed, not. But let's say, okay,
Hmm.
you know, I have bodhicitta, I have some kind of compassion. Ain't no child could have, oh man, disaster. I can barely handle this being in my bathroom right now. So, uh,
Is that part of your past karma?
sure, absolutely. And it's her karma too. You know,
Yeah.
we have a karmic connection, right? But that's like with all of you as well, right? And some of our connections are stronger, some of our connections are weaker, some are good, some are bad. Like I said, some change, you know, change. Like you might have a really bad relationship with somebody, and eventually you purify that karma and you become friends, or you just don't meet them anymore, you know, and everything is fine. I don't know. It's so complicated. You know, there's just too many variables. But in general, positive or skillful acts of body, speech, and mind create happiness. Negative or unskillful acts of body, speech, and mind create suffering. Okay. And samsara, these six realms, are um, a misperception of reality based on our own acts of body, speech, and mind.
Misperception of reality.
Yeah. Misperception, a misperception. We're not perceiving things properly. And the teachings and the teachers and the Dharma and all of that is an attempt to help us to perceive things correctly and become free of this illusory uh, state full of mostly suffering. Ugly bags of mostly water. Ugly bags of mostly water. That's what some aliens in Star Trek called human beings.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Ugly, ugly bags of mostly water.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, um,
Kind of
okay.
poetic.
Pardon?
Kind of poetic.
It is. I mean, it's not wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think, you know, most people are ugly, but we are bags of mostly water. That part is true. Um, okay. So let's
I have a
see.
question.
Oh my God. Okay, yes. Who has a
I've
question?
heard I've heard
Yes.
different different descriptions of this, and so my question might be um, that because what we're experiencing right now is a misperception, also the realms are a misperception.
Mhm.
And that they're actually, the location of them is not a location, but a misperception that is not located, but is in the mind.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So is that in the Alaya?
I don't
In the
think so,
mind?
but I don't think so. I don't think so. The karma is stored in the alaya,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think you would say that our perceptions are stored in the alaya. But again, this is something I can't say it for 100%. I can't answer that question.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like Rinpoche described, like we talk about the six realms using location terms, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're born in the human realm, you're born in the animal realm or whatever, right? As though it were a place and sort of separate from you, okay? But it's just like Tuku Rinpoche described the hell realms, he said your consciousness leaves your body and then you awake in the nightmare
Mm-hmm.
that is the hell realms. Okay. So just like if you imagine having a nightmare or your partner who's sleeping next to you is having a nightmare, right? You're not in that nightmare. You can see that they're having a nightmare, but they're 100% in that nightmare and experiencing that as real and suffering due to that. Okay. So that's how they described, like, I don't know if it was a class or if it was a Saturday thing or what, but Rinpoche was talking about like how we have compassion for others and help them while maintaining the view of emptiness,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because what we tend to do is we suffer with them and we get caught in their own delusion, okay? And um you know can you hear that? Did you
No.
hear that? Oh, okay. um uh it's like um so if we do that, right, if we're like, which is what we normally do, right, if you imagine like your friend is really suffering, you're going through something, like grieving or whatever, then we are like also in pain and we're like sitting with them and crying also, and sort of like we're getting caught in that whole thing, okay? But if we do that all the time, then become exhausted, right? We get compassion fatigue by doing that, by um, uh, getting caught in the delusion with them. Whereas if we maintain the view of emptiness while doing the same thing, giving that person comfort, keeping them company, talking with them, and also, but not being involved, then we are free and we can in the end have a lot more energy because we haven't been um, caught up in this. We're not stuck in that, you know, in that view. And then, so then they talk about it like your friend having a nightmare. You're not saying they're not suffering, right? If someone's having a nightmare, you know that they're suffering, you know that there's fear, they're making obvious, screaming or sweating or threshing or whatever, that we can see they're having a nightmare. We know that for them it's real. But for us, we know that it's not real, right? Because it's just a dream. But that doesn't mean we don't have compassion for them, right?
Mhm.
Even though we know it's not real. So it's the same for enlightened beings. They're not getting caught up in our soap opera, as Sean says, right? They're not getting caught up in our movie. They know it's just bleh. They know it's just a movie, right? So they're not getting um, trapped by that same illusion. Yeah. But they feel for us, as we are trapped in that.
Yeah. So
Okay.
it's a real kindness that they're here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, more than
Absolutely.
kindness.
It really is. When you consider like they have human bodies, which are no fun, you know, especially as we age. Tuka Rinpoche is currently walking with two canes. Jigme Khyentse Rinpoche had polio as a child, and so, as always has pain in his leg and needs to walk with a cane. We had a very, inspiring high master called Tenga Rinpoche in France some years ago, who was, I mean, he had like one eye, he had sort of
Mhm.
all this pain in his back and his body. He could barely walk, and he spent so much time giving us empowerments and teachings, and just was like, they give everything, they give everything. Even though, having said that, like their suffering is just, it's not the same as our suffering, like they experience this discomfort. But if you have realized emptiness, you're not suffering in the same way as an ignorant being is, because it's not real and so forth. Yeah. And we can test that on ourselves, actually, sometimes, depending. But I say that because sometimes I do that. Sometimes if we find ourselves kind of, even physically, if we're in pain, we can kind of just think, oh, this is just, various signals being sent to my brain, like, where are these signals actually? They're not really existent in the first place. You can kind of do that sort of examination or contemplation, and sometimes the pain will go away. Or if we find ourselves kind of worked up in emotion, we can just be like, oh, you know, you're being ridiculous, and sometimes if you've practiced, especially, it becomes much easier. You can just drop it. And it's possible. I wish I could do this a lot more often than I've been able to do it, but you really can. You can just drop it entirely. And the snap of a finger is just, you're just happy, it's just gone. It's just like, it has no true existence. It's all an illusion. I'm working myself up for nothing, you know, and it can go. Can. It doesn't,
I
oh,
was,
it's operative word being can. It is possible. Yes,
I
John.
was, I was hearing a difference, say we're just compassion to another individual, that there was a knife's difference between um, participating in and just giving compassion. And that's the thing that you want to be able to do. Um, we don't participate in a child's nightmare. We give comfort and compassion for that child.
Mm.
Um, and I think that that's always the danger. And that's what we're going for, is have awareness enough to be able to not jump into someone's illusion.
Yeah, and it doesn't, the thing is, it's not just, and I'm glad you raised that because I did want to add this and I forgot. It's not just like we're protecting our energy, right? Or we're sort of preserving our energy so that we can continue on the path and continue to benefit others. It's also that if we are in that state of calm and compassion, we are going to naturally be more grounded, and we're going to also, more importantly, have easier access to our innate wisdom and compassion, and therefore easier
Mhm.
access to the right thing to do to actually help this person, you know, rather than just suffering with them, sitting on the bed and crying with them, which, is helpful in a way. I guess the person can feel understood, but we lose something in that process too. Do you know what I mean? So we're
Yep.
more likely to be able to help them if we are in that state versus if we are in an emotional state. Okay.
It's
Oh,
interesting because in psychology, it's referred to as like psychotherapeutic holding and presence rather than you're with the person, but you're holding, and there's and you're with the person and seeing and witnessing, and but not just what you were saying, like the idea of being with the person. And
right.
I think I know it's a little different language, but
Hmm.
that's the, when I'm at my best,
Hmm. Hmm.
that's what I aspire toward.
Yeah,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
that's a really good thing because, right now, it's perfect because I mean, what therapist would last a week if they
Mhm.
couldn't do that?
You
You
would
know?
just be blah.
Yeah, you would just be
Yeah.
a mess. So, and then useless to anybody that you're
Mhm.
trying to help, so it's exactly the same concept.
You know
All right.
that you're doing it wrong whenever you're holding someone's hand on their deathbed and they start comforting you.
Yeah, yeah, don't do that, man.
But actually, people have been told about that exact thing happening, like because I've worked through the years, and I think who else has worked in hospice? That actually can be a two-way thing. That
Hmm.
it's not just a one-way comfort. That the person,
Yeah.
because in just human, I know this might not be exactly, but the idea of being able to have the dyadic back and forth, that it's comforting for the person receiving comfort to be able to give comfort, and that's also a way of being able. I just want to, like I think it sometimes can be a two-way thing.
Interesting.
Sometimes my desire for laughter overwhelms me and I just can't stop myself.
Okay. All right, so let's do the closing prayers now, okay?
Okay.
All right. Kanri wawe koe shinkansu, pendande wa malu juene, chenesi wonten singyo soye, shapeke kava tu tengu shi. Om Srishti Jigme Kempe Kalong Yamparu Kunkau Sichen Susepum Dawa Nidrudan Sanam Ke Nobucho Seche Gawe Shakin Tatsu So Om Srishti Selai Kem Suchen Lok Chinjune Unzin Datse Kutu Pemawang Sangsun Natre Gyapo Dadene Lapchenten De Shaitan Tage Sho Lama Kungam Sampo Sawada Chiduku Se Ringwa Sawada Trine Tashingi Pa Sawada Lama Dadre Wa Me Pa Chingi Lo. By this merit may all attain omniscience, may defeat the enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of cyclic existence, may I free all beings. Sunandi tamchezi pani chone nepe dranam pamche shin kegana chi balon trupai sipe tsole doa doa sho. May bodhicitta, precious and sublime, arise where it has not yet come to be, and where it has arisen, may it never fail, but grow and flourish ever more and more. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain and dispel the miseries of the world. Ever absorbed in the display of divine forms and primordial awareness, appearance, sound, and perception in the state of divinities, mantras, and dharmakaya, may I, inseparable from the practice of the profound and secret great yoga, attain within the essence of mind the state of one taste. Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Tishtadrito Me Bhava Sudokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Sawasiti Me Prayasa Sawakarma Sutsa Me Chitam Shriyang Kuruhum Ha 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 O Bhagawan Sawatathagata Vajramame Mansa Vajriva Mahasamaya Sattva. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. We will start with week 13 next week. All right. The 6 realms. And we'll go from there. Okay. Oh,
Thank you.
Thank
all
you.
right. Thanks,
Have a good
everybody.
night.
Love you. Good night.
Bye.
Have a good whatever.